Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, I've been waiting to record this one, and if you caught the end of episode 4, you heard me tease it. What JoJo's Bizarre Adventure taught me about justice, loyalty, and honor. And I meant every word when I said this one's going to be a lot of fun, because it is. But it's also one that's been sitting close to my heart for a long time. And I'm really glad I finally get to talk about it properly. Before we dive in, if you're brand new here, welcome. You don't need to have watched JoJo to be here for this episode, I promise. What I'm really talking about today isn't plot, it's not recap. Fair warning though, I will be talking about the things that contain spoilers from already released seasons and beyond. So if you're in mid-watch and want to stay unspoiled, maybe save this one and then come back to it later. Anyways, overall, it's about what a story can teach you about being a person. And that part is for everyone. So, let's get into it. I've talked in previous episodes about how JoJo became one of the most important things in my life during a really difficult chapter and still going. It has remained the most important things in my life to this day. Over 7 years, a star tattoo, over 12,000 roleplay messages as Jolene. There's so much more, but we'll just cap it there. So, yeah. What I haven't fully unpacked yet is what it actually left me with. Not just emotionally, philosophically, I guess. If that doesn't sound too serious for a show where a man named Giorno Giovanna fights people with the power of gold. The thing about JoJo is that underneath all the absolutely unhinged, glorious, committed chaos of it all, the poses, the screaming, the fashion, the stands, there is this really consistent through line. Every part, every JoJo, every arc asks the same question in a different way. What does it mean to be a good person when the world is trying to break you? And the answers it gives are not simple. They're not clean. They cost people things. But they are so deeply human. And over time, I realized this show had been quietly building a value system inside me without even fully noticing it was happening. And so today, we're going to be talking about some of those values. Justice, loyalty, and honor. And if transformation sneaks in somewhere, because it always does with JoJo, we'll let it. So let's start with justice. Because I think the word justice gets treated like this big, abstract, institutional thing. Courts, rules, punishment. Somebody did something wrong and now there are consequences. Clean and distant. JoJo doesn't do clean and distant. Justice in this universe is personal. It's emotional. And it almost always comes from people who've already been hurt. Reimi Sugimoto is one of those characters who did this for me the most quietly. If you know, you know. Reimi is a ghost. She was literally already gone before part 4 even started. And she still shows up. She still guides. She still holds her place in the story specifically so that what happened to her won't happen to someone else. She begs and pleads for help until she finds it. She doesn't stop until her justice is settled. And that's the thing that got me. Justice. The way Reimi carries it isn't about punishment. It's about protection. It's about saying, I know what this cost, and I don't want it to cost someone else the same thing. Jolene carries it too, but louder, more defiant. Justice through Jolene looks like refusing to accept a version of events that erases the truth. It looks like being angry on behalf of people who couldn't be angry for themselves. It looks like fighting even when nobody is watching and nobody is going to thank you for it. Strength, determination, love. And Josuke, part 4 Josuke, shows you a softer version of the same thing. His stand heals. His instinct is repair, not destruction. He wants to fix what's broken. That's still justice. That's actually maybe the most radical version of it. And then there's Giorno. Giorno Giovanna is where this really shines. He goes as far as turning things from the inside out, working within a broken system, refusing to wait for permission, choosing to push through with his familia no matter how impossible it looks, protecting Trish when no one else would, getting justice for the people who deserved it and couldn't fight for themselves. What all of them taught me is that justice doesn't have to come from power or authority. It comes from people who got hurt and decided they cared too much to let it happen again. It's care. It's protection. It's saying, I see what's wrong here and I'm not going to look away from it. Justice, to me, became less about punishment and more about protection. Loyalty. This is the one that gets me every time. Every single time. I want to talk about Narancia first because I think he's one of the most underrated examples of what loyalty actually looked like when it's completely vulnerably real. Narancia loves loudly. He doesn't know how to do it quietly. He's emotional and messy, and he feels everything at full volume. And his loyalty to his found family, to Bruno's crew, to Giorno, to all of them, is the center of who he is. Not a trait, the center. His death wrecked me, and it still wrecks me, because when you watch someone love that openly, that completely, losing them hits differently. When you feel the specific weight of it, you understand why grief can feel like anger when love has nowhere left to go. And then there's Bruno Bucciarati, who I've talked about before in the context of my Uncle Dan, because Bruno is the person who shows you what loyalty looks like from any other direction, from the one doing the choosing. Bruno doesn't ask his team to be perfect. He doesn't ask them to be polished or impressive or without damage. He just chooses them. He keeps choosing them over and over, even when it costs him everything. Even when the stakes are impossible, he stays. In person and from afar, he chooses his familia and gives them unconditional support. That was exactly how he earned Narancia's loyalty and why Narancia would go to the ends of the earth for him. That's the thing JoJo taught me about loyalty that I hadn't seen articulated. Loyalty isn't conditional on the other person being easy to love. It's a choice you make and keep making. It survives imperfection. It survives hardship. It's not about earning your place. It's about being chosen and choosing back. I grew up feeling like belonging was something I had to earn. Like, if I could just be the right amount of everything, not too much, not too weird, not too loud, then maybe people would let me stay. Maybe I would be accepted easier. JoJo showed me that the kind of loyalty worth having doesn't work like that. It doesn't ask you to shrink first. Loyalty in JoJo isn't perfection. It's chosen over and over again. And if we go all the way back to the very beginning, that's where Speedwagon comes in. Speedwagon befriending Jonathan Joestar in part 1 is loyalty from the first episode. A man who had every reason not to care, who chose to anyway. The Speedwagon Foundation carried that loyalty across generations, across time, across the entire Joestar bloodline. The whole story is built on that first choice to show up for someone, which brings me, naturally, to Honor. Because you can't talk about Speedwagon and Jonathan in the same breath without ending up there. Honor is the quietest of these three. And maybe because of that, it took me the longest to understand what JoJo is actually teaching me about it. Jonathan Joestar is genuinely one of the most earnest characters in fiction. He's almost too good, right? In a modern story landscape where we love complicated anti-heroes and moral gray areas, Jonathan can read as simple, old-fashioned, almost naive. But here's the thing. Jonathan never stops being himself. Not once. No matter what Dio does to him, no matter how much is stripped away, no matter how many times he has every reason to become cruel in response to cruelty, he doesn't. He stays aligned with who he is. That's not simple. That's actually incredibly hard. And it's where his real strength lives. Jotaro is the flip side of that. He's not warm and open the way Jonathan is. He's reserved, restrained, more comfortable with 3 words than 30. But his honor shows up consistently. He does what's right. He protects those who needs protecting. He doesn't make a big speech about it. He just does it quietly every time. What I took from both of them is that honor isn't a performance. It doesn't need an audience. It's not about being loud or recognized or praised for doing the right thing. It's about staying in alignment with yourself when everything around you is chaos. When it would be easier to compromise. When you're exhausted and hurt and you'd have every excuse to become someone harder. Honor, for me, became about consistency, not perfection. And I think about that a lot in my own life, in the communities I try to build, in the way I try to show up for people. You don't have to be perfect to have integrity. You just have to keep showing up as yourself, even when it's inconvenient. Even when nobody's watching. Even when it costs you something. Okay, so I said transformation might show up organically. It showed up. Oh, of course it did. This is JoJo after all. And this will bring me back to the topic of talking about Giorno again. And Giorno, he started out as a kid who grew up with nothing. No stable home, no sense of belonging. And through the most bizarre, heartbreaking, glorious series of events, he becomes someone. Not because someone handed it to him, because he decided who he was going to be and walked toward it without flinching. Johnny Joestar might be another favorite example of this in the entire series. He starts broken in the most literal way. And what the story does with him, the slow, painful, earned transformation he goes through, is genuinely one of the most moving character arcs I've experienced in any medium. What JoJo keeps showing, part after part, is that identity isn't fixed. You are not permanently the person you were at your lowest point. You're not stuck as the version of yourself that got hurt, or that made mistakes, or that didn't know better yet. You're allowed to rebuild. You're allowed to become someone new without erasing who you were. And that, honestly, might be the thing that saved me during those 7 or more years more than anything else. Not a single moment. Just this repeated, consistent message from a completely unhinged show about people punching evil with their souls. You can change. You're allowed to change. The story isn't over. And when I put justice, loyalty, honor, and transformation together, it's not a list of lessons. It's a language. JoJo gave me words for things I already felt but couldn't explain. It gave me frameworks for understanding why people protect each other, why bonds feel so intense and life-defining when they're real, why doing the right thing still matters even when it costs you something, why the person you're becoming doesn't have to be the person you've always been. I didn't realize it was happening in real time. I was just watching an anime. I was just role-playing as Jolene. I was just caring way too much about fictional people in an increasingly impossible situations. But that caring was doing something. It was building something. It was quietly handing me a set of values I didn't know was missing. And when I finally got the star tattoo, after 7 years, after everything, what I felt wasn't just love for the series. It was recognition. These things I felt from it. The justice, the loyalty, the honor, the transformation, they were already inside me. JoJo just helped me find them. It has shaped my own soul, my own core values, and will continue to do so for the rest of my life. When everything feels impossible, shaky, hard, I always ask myself, what would JoJo do? Which JoJo? Whatever JoJo in that moment I need courage from. So, here's what I want you to hold from today. The stories you love are not arbitrary. The characters that live rent-free in your head, the arcs that wrecked you, the fictional deaths you still haven't fully recovered from, they're not just entertainment. They're mirrors. They're teaching you something about your own values, your own sense of justice, your own capacity for loyalty, your own definition of what it means to show up with integrity. And if you've ever felt embarrassed for caring that much about a story, don't. That depth of feeling is not a flaw. It's how you're wired. It's beautiful. And it means you already understand, on some level, what it feels like when something is worth protecting. That's not small. That's everything. My reflection prompt for this week for you all is there a value, justice, loyalty, honor, or something else entirely that a story or character first helped you understand? What did it teach you that real life hadn't figured out how to say yet? Next time, we're going to talk about something important, choosing yourself without burning it all down. And I just wanted to say thank you all for listening to my podcast today. Make sure you go ahead and follow, comment, and share my podcast if it resonates with you and if you're enjoying my content. It really, really helps. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Keep going. And come find your party.